the tremendous abuses of power that are causing so much damage to our nation, our true patriots. For the third time in as many years, President George Bush is visiting Salt Lake City, capital city of the state in which he enjoyed the greatest margin of victory in both of his presidential elections. And for the third time, thousands of us are gathered here on the occasion of his visit to raise our voices out of great concern for our nation. We join together as people of conscience, people who not only love our country and the values upon which our Constitution rests, but who strongly believe that our actions and the actions in which our country engages should be consistent with our most basic proclaimed moral values. We are grateful that Daniel Ellsberg has joined us here today. Daniel Ellsberg is perhaps the greatest example in our time of the courageous exercise of conscience, who put everything on the line, his security clearance, his career, and a possible life sentence in prison to let the American people know the truth about the lies that led us into and perpetuated the catastrophic war in Vietnam, and he helped bring down that lying, Constitution-betraying Nixon administration. Our voices in unison today because President Bush, Vice President Cheney, and other members of the administration have engaged with the sad and dangerous complicity of Congress and much of the mainstream media in unprecedented, egregious human rights violations, vast deceit of Congress and the American people, astounding crimes against peace of the same nature as those for which men were convicted during the Nuremberg trials, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and blatant violations of our Constitution, the rule of law, our nation's most critical treaty obligations, and the system of checks and balances so crucial to our constitutional democracy. We gather today because we understand that it is only through citizens embracing our democracy and demanding far better of our elected representatives that our nation's course will be altered toward the restoration of the rule of law. Although this administration has only a little more than 7 months left, we gather here today not out of partisanship or a hunger for retribution, but out of a heartfelt conviction that our great nation will be irreparably harmed without the full disclosure of the truth and reforms after we learn the truth that will in the future prevent the abuses suffered by our nation and by people around the world as a result of the unlawful and immoral conduct perpetrated by the Bush administration and condoned by the United States Congress. We gather today because it's not over yet. Far from it. So much damage is being done to our nation every day. So much hatred is generated toward us every day. and so many atrocities are being perpetrated against people around the world every day with the unprecedented authorization of the President of the United States, and in some instances with the collusion of an astoundingly craven Congress. In addition, there is a substantial risk that, especially with a complacent citizenry, the President will order an attack against Iran, having contrived a case for another illegal, tragic war of aggression against a people who largely stood in sympathy and solidarity with the United States on 9/11, on the basis of the same sort of lies and fear-mongering that led us to the disastrous invasion and occupation of Iraq. We gather because we value our democracy, the reality of which depends upon an informed electorate, rather than a nation that has been deceived and kept in the dark because of the obsessive secrecy of this outlaw administration, and because of the timidity and irresponsibility of a Congress that has failed in its constitutional role as a co-equal branch of government that is supposed to serve as a check and balance to the executive branch. We gather together today because we want to be able to say to our children, to others who look back in history, and to ourselves, that we took a stand for our country, for our most fundamental shared values, and most importantly, for our moral values as reflected in the best of religious and humanitarian traditions. Some people want us to just go along and keep our mouths shut. And we hear it all the time here in Utah. We're here to say that we won't keep our mouths shut. Not as long as we are able, and not as long as we can pass along to our children and later generations the moral imperative that in the face of wrongdoing, we must all do what we can to bring about positive change.